My name is Shashi Mittal, and I am a senior operations research scientist with Amazon.com. I'm a part of a team that is called the Middle Mile Planning, Research, and Optimization Science, or MMPROS for short. And what our team does is basically develop mathematical models and algorithms for optimizing the middle mile part of the network. However, today, I'm going to be talking about the work that we did on improving the customer experience in the last mile delivery space. And this is basically about providing a more precise estimated time of arrival for your shipments when they are going to be delivered by Amazon Logistics. So here is a high-level agenda for my talk today. I'm going to first describe why we need delivery estimated time of arrival. I'm going to describe two use cases, both of which I personally encountered, to demonstrate why having delivery ETA is important for our customers. On the surface of it, this might seem to be a problem that is not very difficult and therefore should have already been solved. But when we started digging into the data, we started observing many peculiar things which make this problem hard. I'm going to describe some of the use cases that we observed when analyzing the data in this regard. Based on our analysis of the data and what we wanted for our customers, we created a machine learning model that helps us provide a more precise arrive by time for Amazon Logistics shipments. So we put this in production, and then based on the feature that we have, I'll show you what the customer experience looks like. And finally, I'll end by talking about my experience working on this project, especially more from the side of not being a machine learning scientist myself. I work a lot on optimization modeling, algorithm development, and things like that. But even not being an expert in machine learning, we were able to develop this feature and roll it out to our customers live. So there's some interesting takeaways that I have, which I'm hoping you all will also find helpful. So why do we need delivery ETAs, right? So let me give you, let me talk about a story about purchasing a new mobile phone, for which I placed an order roughly over a month and a half back. So it turns out that the mobile phone that I had, it was not holding its charge very well, so I needed to upgrade and placed an order for a very expensive mobile phone, not on Amazon.com. I do shop on sites other than Amazon.com as well. I placed the order on April 22nd, and the promised delivery date that I was provided was April 29th, which happens to be a Monday. So obviously, I'm really excited, right? Everyone is excited when they're about to get the newest flashy gadget, right? And this one turns out, is an expensive mobile device. I do have it in my pocket, but because it was expensive, the site from which I purchased required a signed delivery for the shipment. So if I'm not at home and the shipment is delivered, then and the delivery person comes, then it will result in a failed delivery. And this is exactly sort of what happened. April 29th was Monday. I was in office. I received absolutely no information about when the carrier is going to make the delivery at my home. So the delivery was attempted at 13:10, right in the afternoon. As I said, I did not receive any notification. So guess what? Resulted in a missed delivery. And not a very happy situation, right? There's something about delayed gratification, right? You place an order for something, you are being told that it's going to arrive on a certain date, and then you do not get it just because you're not at home, right? Now, I was actually free around 1 p.m. in the office. So if the carrier had told me or the e-commerce seller had told me that my shipment will arrive around the afternoon time, then I could have made a short trip back to home to make sure that I was present to sign for the delivery. But I did not get any such information. So when I returned home and I checked the website of the carrier, and I had to call them and spend half an hour talking on the phone to an automated voice service, no less. And that was sort of somewhat painful because it was not able to understand my accent. It took me some time to figure out how to choose the option for redelivering the shipment to a pickup location. I was not going to have them redeliver to my home because, again, the same thing would repeat, right? That the delivery person would come, I'm not at home, delivery fails, and then the whole cycle repeats. So I opted to have the shipment picked at the nearest pharmacy store from my home, and it did finally get delivered, but 2 days later. This was somewhat of a time-sensitive delivery for me because Friday of that week, 2 days later, I had to go to Los Angeles for a business trip. And without having a new phone, it would have been very difficult for me to manage my trip and get around in LA. So not a great customer experience in my view. And I'm pretty sure people in this audience also have probably faced this situation sometime or the other with their deliveries, where the shipment gets delivered when you're not at home. Either they don't leave it outside your home, or they leave it at a place where it might be very difficult for you to find the shipment. Okay, so when you typically place an order for a phone, right? You also order accessories that go along with the phone, right? So in this case, I wanted a phone case and a screen protector to go along with it. This time, thankfully, I placed order on Amazon.com, and here is what the customer experience looked like. So I placed the order on April 23rd. I chose the slower delivery option because my phone was going to arrive on April 29th, so I was in no hurry to get this particular delivery. So the shipment went out for delivery on April 27th, which happened to be Saturday. And at 9:53 a.m., I received a push notification saying that my shipment is expected to arrive by 3:30 p.m., which is a very useful information. It was Saturday, and we were at home, but 3 p.m. is roughly around the time when we leave from home for our grocery purchase for the week. So if I had not received this information, I might have left from home earlier, right? And so then I would not be present at the home to receive the delivery. So I was able to sort of manage my manage my schedule for the day based on this information. A few hours later, which is, as you can see, the time is 22 past 2, I received another notification saying that I can actually track where the driver is on the map. So I open up the Amazon shopping app. It shows me the map, and it tells me that the driver is 7 stops away, and I can even see, where the driver is relative to my home, which again is very useful information. And then finally, the shipment was delivered at 2:50 p.m. So it did get delivered before the ETA that was messaged to me. And not just that, the delivery person took a photograph of the delivery that I could see on the app to know where exactly the shipment was placed. And this final part is also important because sometimes the delivery person will leave the shipment in a more secure location, either to save the shipment from the elements. Like, for example, if it is raining, then you don't want it to be left out in the rain. They might want to place it in a secure location so that it does not get stolen. So if you know that your shipment has arrived, but you don't know where around your home it has been left, right? Then you might end up spending a lot of time searching for that shipment. So overall, I would say a much better delivery experience. First of all, I was told when the shipment is going to arrive. Then I was able to track it on the map. And finally, when it actually got delivered, I was able to see where it was delivered around my home on the app. So this is sort of like the simplification that we have brought in terms of customer experience. And again, as I said earlier, this seems like something natural that we should have solved way earlier, right? And a year back, actually, the customer experience for Amazon, it would not show you the expected time of arrival, and you would get to see the map tracking only when the driver was closer to your home. So in other words, at the start of the day, you would have really no information about when the shipment is going to arrive at your home, and making it difficult for you to plan your day around that. And we actually did hear from the customers, like this customer, for example, complaining that we have made so much of technological progress, right? And still the last mile delivery carriers, they cannot tell us a more precise time of when the shipment is going to arrive or a delivery window. And even our CEO, one of his quotes that I really like is that our customers are always looking for more. They are divinely discontent, and the more information that we can provide to them about their purchase, about when their shipment is going to arrive, the more happy they are going to feel, and therefore that is going to be better overall for our business. So in fact, I would say that waiting for something is not what people generally like to do, right? Like, for example, if you're told that my talk is going to start at 11:30 a.m., but never told when it is going to end, I'm sure a lot of you would probably not have turned up, right? Similarly, if you go to a restaurant and you order something, right, which is going to take a long time to cook, you will feel fine if the waiter comes to you and say that, yeah, your order is going to be ready, but it's going to take some time, so you might have to wait for half an hour. Versus compared to the waiter telling you nothing, right? And the order taking a long time to arrive. And so, you might not even, like the food might not even taste as well if you feel that you have waited longer than what you were supposed to. So there's something about, as I said, about delayed gratification that throws off customers. And they always want to know, where exactly in the process they are. If they're waiting for something, then when exactly that thing is going to happen. So in fact, we went out and did a customer survey. We asked the customers, in terms of the delivery experience, what are the topmost features that they want us to have for them? And providing delivery windows or better estimated arrival time for the shipments was ranked third in the US and topmost in the UK. And UK in particular, again, we require attended deliveries, which means that if the customers are not at their home, then the shipment will not get delivered, which is somewhat different from what we have in the US. And it's no surprise that in UK, the customers felt that this was a really important feature that they would want to see in our app. So let me come to describing why is this a hard problem, right? Now, I have actually been involved with the Amazon last mile delivery service for a fairly long time. Like when I had joined Amazon, this was in its very inception phase, and that's why I deeply care about the customer issues that we have on the delivery side. So the first thing that we did was just to go out and look at the delivery data. So before the driver departs from the delivery station, we do create a route plan for the drivers, which will tell them in what sequence they are supposed to visit the stops where they have to deliver, and also the time that we estimate they will take to reach that stop and service that stop and move on to the next stop and so on and so forth, right? So if the drivers perfectly followed the route in the fashion that I'm showing here, everything would be good and fine, right? Based on the plan, you would know when the driver is going to be visiting a particular stop, and therefore using that, you would be able to tell the customer that your shipment is going to arrive by this time. But it turns out that the real world is not all that perfect. Some of the interesting use cases we saw were, for example, that the drivers would actually not follow the sequence, but haphazardly deliver the shipments to the different stops, which is totally fine. The challenge is that there are so many factors that you cannot incorporate upfront when generating the route. For example, there might be a road closure on the route. So the driver will have to take a detour, and therefore they may go and deliver some shipments before they were scheduled to, and some of the shipment delivery might get delayed because of this, right? There might be weather issues which just slow down the drivers. If it is raining heavily, or there is a big traffic jam, which is not under our control, right? Then that can throw off the delivery process, and then it's up to the drivers to make what's the right judgment in terms of delivering the shipments to the customers. The next use case that we saw was that we might create a route for one driver, but the size of the packages might end up being bigger than what we had thought, right? And so instead of having one driver deliver to all of these customers, we might end up splitting the route between the two drivers so that all of the shipments can fit in their delivery van. And so then for at least one set of these shipments, the delivery time is going to be way different from what we had put in the plan. And therefore, that makes the problem challenging, especially because we don't know upfront when the routes might get split between two different drivers. Yet other use case is that sometimes drivers do usually take a break for having their lunch, right? And that is factored into the route plan, but we don't exactly know when that will happen. And so there again can be a deviation of the actual delivery time from what we planned. So these are just the top 3 use cases that I described, right? But there are many other situations that sort of create deviation of the actual delivery time from what we plan. Here is a fun fact that I would like to tell to you all. Every morning when I drive from my home to office, I always put the route on the GPS. This is just for fun. I know how to go from my home to my office, but I'm always interested in understanding how well the GPS can tell me when I'm going to reach the office. And even when taking into account things like real-time traffic data and weather and whatnot, typically what I have seen is that I almost always tend to arrive 5 to 10 minutes later than what the GPS is telling me. And more so when I leave around the time when the traffic gets more and more busy. So just for going from one stop to another, you can see that there can be a deviation of 5 to 10 minutes from what the GPS anticipated, right? And when it comes to delivery routes, they are typically 50, 60, maybe even more than 100 shipments in one delivery van. And so these delays, these deviations can add up, right? So this is an example of when we plotted the histogram of the deviation of the actual delivery time from the planned delivery time. And you can see that there is a good amount of a spread in this distribution, which is what sort of the main reason for this problem being hard is. In terms of providing better estimate for delivery times, there are like many different conflicting objectives. We want to be able to provide this information to as many customers as possible, which is what we are referring to as coverage. But we also want to make sure that we provide this information in an as accurate fashion as possible, right? We don't want to lose customer trust by giving them wrong expected arrival times. We also want to provide this information to the customers as early in the day as possible. So for example, if your shipment is going to arrive at 2 p.m., but only at 1 p.m. you are going to learn that my shipment is going to be arriving by 2 p.m., then that information is not very useful, right? Ideally, we want to give this information at the start of the day. So this gap between when we message the ETA and when the shipment actually arrives is what we refer to as the lead time. And one of the challenges that we had faced before was that we could, for example, create models that were very accurate, but would give this information only to some fraction of the customers, but not all of it. Or that information would be generated at a time that was much later in the day and therefore not very useful for the customers. So how did we tackle this problem? So we used machine learning. And as I said, I'm not a machine learning scientist. But if you have attended the keynote talks here and other speakers talk about their experience for ML, right? The common theme is that today it is more easy than ever to build machine learning models and use it for improving customer experience, even if you don't have deep expertise in this area. So even though I had not worked on any machine learning project at Amazon before, I was able to leverage the existing tools and technology that we had to create this model. So this is a high-level overview of what the model looks like. It takes as input many different factors and generates two sets of outputs. First is the time by which we expect the shipment will reach the customer, and the second is how much confident are we in that prediction. So the variables that we take into account, some of them are, I would say, fairly intuitive. So for example, if you look at how far the driver is for the stop for which we want to make the prediction, right? So the farther the driver is from a stop, the less the confidence I'll have in the prediction. We have also seen interesting patterns with respect to whether the delivery is happening on a weekday or a weekend. So we take that into account as well. How many shipments are there? If there are a good number of shipments in a driver's route, then chances are that a lot of those shipments are going to one particular stop or like high density regions where the delivery process might be faster than what we anticipate. We look into factors like how the drivers typically have adhered to the route in the past. There's a good indicator of whether they will be following the plan that is given to them on the day of delivery or not. But as I said, there are also situations that are out of our control that can lead to the drivers deviating from the plan that has been provided to them, right? So we take into account how the driver is performing on the day of delivery. So for example, historically a driver might have done very well, but on the day of the delivery, the weather might be very bad. And so the deliveries are happening later than what they were planned to. And the model can use this information that is available in real time and take that into account to update the predictions accordingly. So these are some of the key variables that we use in this model and get both the estimated arrive by time and the confidence in the prediction. So for any machine learning model, there are roughly two phases that you have. You take the historical data and you train your model using that historical data. And this flowchart represents that training process. So there's a lot of data cleanup and preparation that we have to do before we send it to the model training routine. And then it will give us two basic pieces of information. The first one is the parameters specific to the model. So for example, if you're using a regression model, then this will have the coefficients for the regression variables. And the second piece of information that we have is the historical driver performance based on the data. So like these two pieces of information, we can store it in a database or some other data source that is then used in real time when we are trying to make the predictions. So how does it work? So at every stop of the driver, for every undelivered shipment, it will basically go through this flowchart, right? We will pull in the information about historical driver performance, current driver performance, the model parameters, and then based on that, we will generate the ETA and the confidence level, leveraging the machine learning model that we have. And then we will see if the confidence is more than a predetermined threshold or not. And if it is so, then we will message that ETA to the customer. Otherwise, we will not message that ETA at that time, right? But remember, this process is repeated at every stop of the driver. So let's say when the driver departs from the station and the shipment that is going to be delivered for me is at the 100th stop. When the driver departs from the station, it is possible that the prediction is not generated at that time. But by the 10th stop, we have enough confidence in our prediction that we can generate that message. So at that time, I will get the expected time of arrival for the shipment. The other nice thing about it is that even when we have messaged the ETA, right, we can still update it. So when we get new information about the current driver performance in real time, we will take that into account and we will adjust it accordingly. So it is possible that initially I get an ETA of 3 p.m. and then we see that the driver is moving faster than what we had anticipated. So then the ETA will change to saying that my shipment will now arrive before 2:30 p.m. instead of saying that it's going to arrive by 3 p.m. So as the driver gets closer to my home address, the better and more precise the prediction is going to become. So how do we know whether this thing works or not, right? Now this is a tricky question, right? Because ultimately it depends on whether customers like this particular information that we are providing to them or not, right? But for the purposes of model training, what we did was we decided upfront what are the key metrics that we want to track for this new feature. So the 4 key metrics that we decided upfront, which is what is listed here, is first is coverage, right? That we want to make sure that we are able to provide this message to as many customers as possible, right? Second is accuracy, and this is very important for us. This is one metric on which we absolutely are not going to compromise on. We want our predictions to be accurate. We don't want to give the customers wrong information because then that can throw off their planning, and that will lead to lowering of the trust that they have with us. We also want this information to be available to the customers as early as possible, which is lead time, which I described earlier, is basically the gap between when we message the ETA to the customer and when the shipment actually arrives. And we want this to be as high as possible, which would imply that the customers are receiving the information as early in the day so that it is useful for them. And then finally, we also have notion of trail time. And trail time is the difference between when the shipment actually arrives at the customer and the ETA that we had messaged to them. And why is this important, right? So, for example, before we launched this feature, we told the customers that their shipments are going to arrive by 9 p.m., irrespective of whether they were 7 stops away or 10 stops away. So, that we could do for all the customers, so the coverage would be 100%. That would be, accurate for almost all the shipments. Even accuracy would be very high. and we would provide that information at the start of the day. But it's not precise, right? Because the shipment might be getting delivered at 2 p.m., but the message that they received was 9 p.m. So the gap between the actual shipment arrival time and the ETA that we message to the customer is also important, because this in some sense represents how precise our prediction is. And this is what we refer to as the trail time, and we want this to be as small as possible. The other key thing to note here is that in terms of accuracy, lead time, and trail time, we measured ourselves only with respect to the first prediction that we made for the customer. So recall that I said that we can end up generating more than one ETA for a customer, right? And the later ETAs will always tend to be more accurate and will have a much lower trail time. But we wanted to aim for accuracy and trail time right at the time when we made the first prediction, and not leave that information to be corrected for a later time. So as I said, we decided upon these metrics, and we also decided upon what the target should be for these metrics, which was important. We built sort of like a simulation kind of a model that we could test. What we would do is we would take every route and we would simulate it exactly in the fashion in which the driver executed it, message the ETA using the model, and then see what were these key metrics. So that helped us ascertaining whether the model that we had would work or not even before we launched it into production. And then after we launched it in production, we continued measuring these metrics. So how did we perform, right? So in terms of coverage, we were like 300 basis points above the target. We were able to actually provide this information to more customers than what we had targeted for. How about accuracy? As I said, accuracy is the key metric for us. It's the most important thing for us, and this is something we absolutely wouldn't compromise on. If we ended up below the target, then we would probably not have launched this feature at all. But it turned out that in March earlier this year, we were actually 200 basis points above the accuracy target. How about lead time? Lead time, we were actually able to beat it by a pretty good margin. We were able to generate the predictions with a lead time that was more than 1 hour above target. And what this means is that the customers knew this information about when the shipment is going to arrive by well ahead in advance in the day, so that they could plan around it. And finally, in terms of trail time, as I mentioned, trail time, we want this to be as small as possible, because that represents how precise we are in terms of getting the predictions. And for the trail time, we were actually 10 minutes better than the target that we had set for ourselves. So in terms of all the 4 metrics, we were able to achieve the target that we had, and that was sort of like very gratifying for us to see. So when we put this all together, what does the customer experience look like, right? So let me walk through the customer experience. But before that, one thing that I would like to state is that this is still in a very early stage. We are just getting started, and we are collecting customer feedback and continuously improving the customer experience. So it is possible, for example, that you may not end up getting an ETA even if your shipment is being delivered by Amazon Logistics. So don't fret too much about it if that happens. And the customer experience that I'm going to describe here is like supposed to be a representative customer experience sample, and your specific experience might be different from what I show in the slides. So this is what the customer experience look like, right? So before the shipment is out for delivery, right, you will get a notification that your shipment will be delivered today, right? And then it is picked up by the delivery driver, and the driver departs from the station. And then the message that you get is that your shipment is out for delivery, right? And in fact, in certain cases, you might even get the expected time of arrival in the push notification. So you don't even need to go to the app. The notification itself will tell you the information that you're looking for. Next, you would get an ETA for the shipment, right? And in certain cases, you might even be able to see the map tracking, how many stops the driver is away, with the ETA shown in the mobile app. And as I said before, we are re-evaluating the ETA at every stop on the driver's route. And if we see that there is a significant change in what the ETA is going to be, we will message the updated ETA. So for example, in this case, the customer initially received an ETA of 1 p.m., right? And then later it got updated to 12:15 because potentially the driver was doing a better job than what we had planned for in the route. Next, when the shipment gets delivered, we are again going to get a push notification. And what I'd shown you earlier was, again, a picture of where your shipment has been delivered around your home, so that if you're not at home, you come back, you know exactly where to find that shipment, right? So in other words, what we have tried to do here is simplify the experience for the customers, right? They don't need to call us to know, when the shipment will arrive, and it is seamlessly integrated into the current app. We have not, tried to create a very different user experience from what already existed. We just built on the top of that. So, so in fact, this is something that that has already been covered by the news media as well. And this happened, when we started doing push notifications for the shipment ETAs. And with this feature, we were able to make customers happy as well. I'm showing two sample tweets here. And one of the customers is really excited that he can now see both the expected time of arrival as well as how many stops away the driver is. And again, that helps, right? Because the customer can sort of prepare better for this delivery and make sure that it is not missed by the driver. And similarly, in the second case, the customer posted this screenshot of their mobile app showing that the shipment is going to arrive before 7:30 p.m. If you look at the time here, right, then it shows 16:05, which means that this message was given to the customers sometime around 4 p.m., right? So, in other words, roughly around a 3.5-hour lead time between when the customer received the message and when the shipment is going to arrive. At least 3.5 hours. It could have been more as well. So, so what are the key takeaways from this work that we did? And here is my take on what you might find useful from this work that we did. What we found is that it usually helps to be transparent with our customers, right? And you should be able to give them more information whenever you can, but you also want to make sure that the information is as accurate as possible. We set a really high bar on how accurate we want the predictions to be. So so we basically worked around that goal, and we were eventually able to accomplish it. And it helps to also look at the data, right? Maybe sometimes go out and directly ask the customers what they want. Problems may not be very obvious at times. And in our case, diving deep into the data also helped us understand different use cases that can result in delivery failures, for example, and how to mitigate that. Finally, you should also try to simplify on behalf of your customers. The model that we created actually is not something very complex. I mean, there are tons of machine learning models out there that can potentially be used, but our goal was to have the simplest possible model that will help us achieve the targets for the 4 key metrics that we had set for ourselves. And that's what we went out and did. So with this, I come to an end of my talk. I hope you found it useful, and there is still a few minutes left, so I would be more than happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.